I had my children on the floor. I was on my favourite blanket that my grandmother gave me on the floor like a cat.
And I realised in that moment the potential of what our bodies can really do as women.
Like I could feel his head, I could do my own internal, like, yeah, his head, I could feel it.
I was in tears, I was just in tears and overwhelmed with gratitude.
Hi, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast, the podcast that is bringing embodied birth wisdom from women from all over the world, sharing their natural birth stories. Don't forget to subscribe and download so that you can always have access to these empowering and positive natural birth stories. Hi, my name is Anna, and I am the Natural Birth Podcast host. I'm a former midwife who left the system, and I'm now the proud founder of Sacred Birth International, a woman-owned company with a mission to revolutionize the birth world and bring focus to the sacred and the natural intelligence of the birth process. We do this by providing world-class education, courses, programs, and coaching to equip women with the knowledge and the tools to have conscious pregnancies, empowering and positive birth experiences, and the most nourishing start possible for themselves and their babies postpartum. We also educate and mentor aspiring birth workers into sacred space holders and physiological birth advocates in the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship, the Beyond a Doula training. If you'd like to work with me or take any of our courses, programs, or the mentorship, then head on over to sacredbirthinternational.com to find out more. Hey, Paula, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. So, from the Gold Coast, Australia, take us back to conceiving your first baby and how you ended up having an accidental unassisted home birth with your first. I love that. Take us back to the beginning of that journey.
Well, the beginning of the journey for me was I met my partner at the age of 29, and he's a little bit older than me. He's 7 years older than me. And we actually conceived quite soon after meeting. So we met in the October, and by the February, I was pregnant. We knew that we wanted to have kids together. We'd already discussed our values, and we just had a really fast connection. I was already living with him. And so we conceived. It was a surprise, and conceived fast in that 3 months after meeting. But we knew that this baby was what we wanted. And so we were both really excited. So right from the get-go, my intuition was I wanted to have a natural birth. And I then just started to research a little bit more on how I could make that possible and how I could support myself and Danny, my partner, in having a birth like that. So yeah, conception for us was a surprise, but we were really excited for what was to come.
It sounds like your baby was ready, just waiting
Yeah,
for you to come together. Like,
definitely was.
great, you're together, let's go.
Yeah. A highlight for me in that first 12 weeks was I went to the hospital for the first visit with my midwife. So I went through the they call it MGP program here on the Gold Coast. Actually, I was in New South Wales. And so I had a midwife assigned to me, and I went and met her at the hospital. And I came home, and I remember saying to Danny, I don't want to birth at the hospital. I don't feel comfortable. I don't like that it's bright. It smells funny. And so there was this big part of me that I knew that I wanted to birth at home, but there was also this big part of me that was really scared because I only had one auntie around me that had had 3 home births, and then the rest of my family, it was either cesareans or hospital births. So yeah, I was torn in deciding what I wanted, but I felt like I was going to go for the hospital birth for the first.
I do love
So
that you had an auntie who had 3 home births. I mean, it's rare to have anyone in your family today, you know, or friendship circle that has had home births. So that's pretty cool though.
yeah, she did become a big support for me,
Mm.
moving through that pregnancy and my second, where I just surrounded myself then with her, and
Mm.
I just asked her for advice. And because I knew she knew how to have a natural birth, and so I just wanted all her support, and I wanted to take that knowledge into the hospital setting, thinking that I was going to birth in the hospital.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Like, we shouldn't really heed the advice of someone who's had a birth we don't want, right? It's so
Yeah,
like important, this message of like, don't listen to people who are telling you this and that, who maybe had a medicalized birth of some sort, if you don't want that. Like, listen to the ones
yeah,
who successfully had home births or natural birth center births or natural hospital births. Those are the people you want to listen to.
yeah. And that's what I also find with the podcast too, is we can really select then what we listen to and what, comes into our subconscious and what we're absorbing, and, stop, well, not stop, but, like you said, don't listen to those stories. We don't have to. So there were some friends of mine that started to tell me stories that I didn't want to hear. And, I was comfortable enough to be like, it's okay, that's your birth and I honor that, but that's not what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, beautiful. Love that for you. So what kind of hospital birth did you plan? Were you going to go with the MGP midwife so you'd have a known midwife with you or like a team you knew or?
Yeah, so I got assigned a midwife and she was going to be with me for the whole time. And then I wanted to do hypnobirthing. So my partner and I did a hypnobirthing program or course that went for 5 weeks. We went every once a week on a night, for 5 weeks. And that really was transformational for my partner. He didn't know his role in birth, and he knew he wanted to support me, but that gave him the tools and the knowledge of what I wanted in birth and what I needed. And it really gave him the power that, um, assisted him to be able to support me. So as a couple, especially because we hadn't been together for very long, it was a really bonding experience for us to be like, this is the birth we want. We need each other and let's do this together. And he was great. He got on board with that, and he took the skills and he definitely used them.
Beautiful. So
Yeah, so we
yeah, let's dive on into like birth and coming closer to birth. Did you have any signs of labor approaching for you at all?
yeah, so I was 30, not 30, I was 41 weeks. Yeah, so I was a week over and still feeling really good, and still visiting the hospital for my appointments there, had my midwife that I was seeing. And yeah, that 41 weeks, the night before her being born, I lost my mucus plug. That was my first sign. Um, and so I knew then that baby was, showing some signs that she was getting ready to come. But I also knew that it could be, another week away. So I
Yeah.
wasn't getting too excited.
Mm.
So I went to bed that night, and then the next morning woke up and I was talking to a friend on the phone. It was about 7 a.m. and I stood up to go to the toilet and my waters broke. So that was really the second sign that she was coming, which was super exciting because I was like, oh, whoa, my water's just broke. So that was a really beautiful introduction to labor. I hadn't felt any contractions or other changes in the body. It was just like the water's broken. That was the first sign. And so from then, I actually 2 hours later at 9 o'clock, I was sitting on a ball, still wasn't feeling any contractions then, and stood up again, and another gush of water came through. So I knew then that she was definitely coming or on her way. And so I rang the hospital and talked to a midwife that was on and said, my waters have just broken. Our plan is to stay at home as long as we can. And then we'll come in, when we're feeling ready. And so they were quite hesitant on the phone and said to me, we would really like you to come in. We just want to check that it is your waters and, make sure that baby's okay. Which at the time and even now, like I was very uncomfortable about going in because I was like, that's not my plan. My plan is I want to stay at home in my comfort as long as I can and then go to the hospital. And so my mum was with me. She was supporting me. I'd hired a doula as well because I knew I wanted that support in the hospital setting. I decided that when we were doing the hypnobirthing. And so I had my mum there and Danny, and they said to me, let's just go in. They'll check your waters and, you won't have to stay there. They'll send you back home and we can finish, you can labor at home. So I thought, okay, let's go do that. I was having some contractions, but it was all in my lower back. I had nothing at the front. And I didn't take the baby bag. I was like, I'm not staying in the hospital. I'm going and they can check me and then I'm going home. So I was pretty determined about that. So we got to the hospital about 12 o'clock. They just checked the liner of my undies and said, yep, that's your waters. That's all we need to check there. And then they put the monitor on my belly and they said, oh, the baby's heart rate is dropping a little bit when you're having contractions. And by then I was having contractions 3 every 10 minutes.
Wow.
But they were subtle enough to me that I could still breathe through them. I could talk between, and I think I just masked it very well in the hospital. And one being a first birth, and two, me not showing, visible signs that the contractions were starting to get intense. They said to me, oh, your waters only broke 3 hours ago. You've still got probably a while to go. You've had a great pregnancy. The baby is fine. Normally it's, later on in labor that we see the heart rate dropping a little bit with the contractions. But, this is just the start of your labor. So we'll send you home. If nothing happens by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, then come back in and we'll induce you. And so I was like, great, see you later. I'm going home.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that is just, you definitely don't have to get induced within that kind of time frame. Just for anyone
I agree.
listening. Yeah, and I mean, when waters break, I definitely think, when it comes to the hospital, if your waters are clear and you feel your baby moving and you feel fine, then playing the devil's advocate, I'm like, maybe like calling the hospital when all is fine is just inviting trouble. But if you have an independent wife, if you have a good relationship, just giving her like a heads up like you did with the hospital, that's a good thing, I think. It's just a variation of normal that your waters break before you go into labor, and most women will go into labor and have a baby within 24 hours. For some, it'll take 48, 72, even 96 hours, and it can all be perfectly normal and safe and fine. The rate of infection that they're so scared about is very minimal, and it's increasing for the woman. So it's increasing for the mama. her womb having an infection.
Yeah.
But for the baby, the evidence shows it doesn't matter if you induce straight away, 24 hours, 48, even up to 96 hours when it comes to infection for babies. So, you know, it's not a big emergency, and it's not something that you like, you have to get checked out for. Definitely, if you have good rapport with your midwife and trust her, then giving them heads up, I think, is definitely wise. And yeah, and then, you can just monitor also yourself, take self-responsibility. Like if you want to go longer at home without getting quote unquote checked out by someone else, it's like minding your, signs of infection. Like, do you have smelly discharge?
Yeah.
Or, do you feel like a fever? Or, when you just feel like in your body when you're getting down, coming down with something, that's signs of infection, right? And if not, then you're fine.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
So you went home.
trusting that. So then so they sent me home, which I was really glad about. So we left the hospital and got home about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And on the way home, they were starting to intensify in my lower back. And then we got home, and Danny's mum was there, and his sister, and the niece, and the nephew, because I thought that same thing. I still thought, I would have a wee while to go. And I got home, and I just had that real instinct that I wanted just to be alone. And so I said, I'm just going to go and hop in the shower. I just need I just felt like I needed to ground myself. And so I got in the shower, and we decided to call the doula at 4 because things were starting to increase in intensity. And about half an hour after that, Danny and Mum just kept popping in to see me, but I was just in the shower the whole time. The water felt amazing on my back. And then about 4:30, I can't, time blurs. But around that time, I remember Mum coming in and checking on me, and I said to her, I just had this real urge that I want to push. And it was just like chalk and cheese of it. The way I describe it, because I'm a personal trainer, and the way I describe it is, it was like if you go for a sports massage and you've got a big knot, and the masseuse is massaging it, and it's really tender, but it feels so good at the same time. It was that sensation of I wanted to push, and it was really tender, but when I let my body push and just fall into it, it felt so good, and I couldn't not do that. My body was just doing it on its own. And so then Mum said to me, let's get you out of the shower. We can support you out here. And that felt good too. I was ready to move out of there and, feel solid on ground without out the water. So that was the transition from the shower to the ensuite bathroom. And then the doula arrived, and she said to me, she was amazing. She said to me, you're looking great, you're sounding great. Just keep doing what your body's telling you to do. And in my mind, well, my body's just telling me to bring this baby down. So I'm just going to bring the baby down. And Danny was in front of me, and I was leaning over him. So I was standing and just moving my body in what felt really good to me, and still in that standing position. And then I remember the doula saying to me, if you want to and you feel comfortable, on your next contraction, see if you can feel anything down there. And so on the next contraction, I put my hand down there, and I could feel her head there. And to me, it was a bit of a shock to me, that especially being my first and still at home, I was like, oh my gosh, she's pretty much, she's here. There's no way I'm going anywhere now. And I looked at Danny and I said, let's ring the ambulance. I feel confident. I feel more comfortable if a medical team is here. And so we rang the ambulance. I don't know how long they took to get there. Maybe, I don't know. They were there pretty quick. And they were like, right, let's get you out of here. They came in guns blazing. And this is really where the doula and Danny just stood up, put a bubble over me and said, she's not going anywhere. She's safe. She knows what she's doing. And just, we didn't call you to take her to hospital. We called you to stand back just in case. And I felt really held and really supported. And I was glad in that moment that I had chosen my team to support me to give me that birth. I didn't talk to them. I didn't look at them. I didn't didn't make eye contact. I just pretty much didn't even know that they were there. I was just really just in the zone. And once I knew they were there, it was just that cool. Now it's time to bring her through, bring her out. And yeah, within 10 minutes of the ambulance being there, she was delivered into Danny's arms. So he caught her from the standing position. And with Lotus, that's our daughter's name, she had a really short umbilical cord that we didn't know. And so when Danny pulled her through, the umbilical cord snapped.
Whoa.
And being naive first-time parents, we didn't even notice that it had happened. My mum videoed the birth, and you watch it back, and Danny's holding her. I'm looking at Danny, he's looking at me, and we're just like, oh my God, we've just had this baby. It's incredible. And the ambulance crew, they were great in that regards. They were supportive. They were like, okay, it's snapped. Let's just clamp mum's cord. Let's clamp baby's cord. And they were great. They never took the baby off me or Danny, or they just clamped that and let us be. And it was never a point of stress or de-stress. Yeah, it was just something that happened because maybe the way that he pulled her up, or I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That can happen. Sometimes the cord can be a bit thinner or more brittle. Cords are so different. But yeah, of course, it can snap if it's kind of tugged very, you snap it like, yeah. So that's good. So it didn't bother the baby. That happened. She was fine. She was very alert when she was born, and
yeah, she was alert. She was crying straight away. She was a great color. There was nothing distressful about that happening. So
that's so
it
good.
was a
'Cause of
beautiful
course,
outcome.
yeah, because of course we want to have the cord intact for as long as possible to get, all that blood through. But the best case scenario for that to happen is a baby that comes out well and, alert and already kind of fully there. If a baby comes out kind of flat, that's when we really want that cord, intact as long as possible. So that's great. You had the best outcome for that kind of thing to
Yes,
happen.
it was definitely on my birth plan to, let the cord go as long as possible. But yeah, we didn't have the choice in that one.
Seems like it all kind of happened the way it should, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very empowering experience. They did take us to hospital. That was my choice as well to say, yeah, take us, check us over. And I birthed the placenta in the hospital naturally. And within 2 hours, they had sent us home.
Beautiful.
So yeah, it was beautiful. It was it felt like it happened really fast, but yeah, she's 5 next week. I'm still on a high from it.
Yeah, amazing. So when was she born? What time?
She was born at 5:20. So we got home at 3, and then she was born 2 hours, 20 minutes later.
Wow. Yeah, that is super quick for a first time birth. But that's just maybe how you birth, because I'm assuming that maybe your second also will be quite a fast birth compared to most. So let's dive on
Yeah, he was
to that.
really quick too.
Yeah, Jen. So when, what was your biggest takeaway from this birth? I'm guessing like wanting a home birth really became clear to you at this point.
Yeah, definitely having a home birth became really clear. Um, Empowerment was massive for me. Just trusting my own intuition. It was it was that transition from maiden to mother was very what's the word? Um, Transformational, because I always look back at that initial time that I said to Danny, I don't want to birth in the hospital. And it was, the unplanned home birth, but was it actually planned? Like deep down, was it that I just stayed at home so long because I knew I wanted to birth at home? So yeah, it felt like I got what I wanted because deep down I trusted myself
Yeah.
and I built the team around me to be able to support that.
Yeah, sounds like it. Love that. Love that team for you as well.
Yeah.
That protection. So with your second, was that a planned pregnancy?
No, surprise again. So Lotus was 9 months old and we got pregnant with our second. And I was still breastfeeding, exclusively breastfeeding Lotus. And yeah, that was a surprise and a transition in its own because, she still was my baby, and falling pregnant again was a shock of how am I going to have another baby? I've still got this little baby. So that transition was not hard, but I knew that I wanted another baby, and there was no point in time that I thought I didn't, but I never thought I'd have them that close together. So it was more of that, I'll still nurture you as much as I can, and grow another and nurture another at the same time. And from there, I always knew that I was going to home birth again. There was no real question between will I birth in the hospital or will I birth at home. Felt like I trusted myself, I trusted my body, and I wanted to experience it in a different way. I wanted to experience in it that I experienced all the motions and felt everything rather than, yeah, it felt like the first one happened really fast and I wasn't kind of, I was always thinking it's going to get, it's going to be longer, it's going to be longer. And then it just happened. And so I never felt like I was really in it. I was just going along with the motions, if that makes sense. And so I knew with the second birth, I just wanted to be really present with the flow of the birth. So we were going to go with our birth provider. We decided to go with a really small hospital in New South Wales that told us that they would be able to provide a home birthing service. So they were going through the systems of signing off so that they could provide home birthing services. And so I had a midwife through them, and through the whole pregnancy, she said, yeah, it's going to be signed off and I'll be able to come and support you at the house. And, so that felt really good. And then I got to 36 weeks, went for my 36-week appointment, and she said, it hasn't been signed off and we're not going to be able to support you. And she looked at me and said, you're not going to come to the hospital, are you? And I said, I can't guarantee that I'll get here in time.
Yeah.
So from then, I knew that I would still birth at home. I couldn't have my mum because it was COVID and she lived in New Zealand, so she couldn't be there. And because I didn't have her, and because she couldn't support me, she provided us. She said to me, I will pay for you to find a private midwife, because on the Gold Coast in New South Wales, it's around that 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, depending who you go through, to have a private midwife. And, we hadn't planned to be paying out that sort of money. And so, yeah, I was amazingly, beautifully grateful for my mum to be able to provide that, because she wanted to feel that I was safe and in capable hands, knowing that I would birth at home. So yeah, we had to try and find a midwife, being 36 weeks pregnant. And luckily enough, the lady who supported me postpartum with Lotus does home births. And so I reached out to her, and she already had 2 ladies booked in that month, but she did know that I would probably birth quite fast. And she knew how devastated I was that they weren't going to support me anymore. And she beautifully took me on and said that she would support me. So yeah, that week of 36 weeks being pregnant, there was that transition of care providers, which in a way didn't bother me, because I always knew I'd birth at home, and that's the space that I needed. It wasn't really about the care provider for me. It was about the space that I was in. And so yeah, that changed, and we changed to her. But she lived an hour away from us, so she always said to me, as soon as you have the first sign of labor, let me know, because it's at least an hour in good traffic to get to your house. And obviously I want to be there to be able to support you.
Yeah. Did you also have your doula this time?
No, so we just had the midwife.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. And then
Yeah, tell us about
moving into
tell us about
pardon.
the birth story. I'm so curious to hear about the birth story.
So second birth, we knew we were having a boy, and Lotus was 17 months by then. I knew that I wanted her at the house, but I also knew I didn't want her in my space. So we had organized Danny's mum to come over so that she could look after her in, the lounge room and the other parts of the house while I birthed, because I didn't want her to leave the house. I wanted her to be a part of it, but I knew that I wanted my own space as well. And I can't remember the time that he was born now, but my first sign with him as well was that my waters broke. And so I felt like I needed to go to the toilet just for a wee, and I went to sit on the toilet, and my waters broke into the toilet. And yeah, that was the first sign with him as well. So same as Lotus's birth. But this time there was a little bit of meconium in the waters. So I rang my midwife, told her that my waters had broke, told her that there was a bit of meconium in there. She was not super phased about that. She just said to me, just leave the toilet and I'll check it when I get there. So, which was great. I was like, cool, there's nothing to worry about with that. I'll just keep laboring away as it starts to come. And the same thing, it all started to happen in my lower back, which felt good as well. I was like, oh, I know this feeling. This is familiar. My body is doing the same thing as it did before. And it was a very similar routine. It was like, okay, but it happened a lot faster. So it was pretty, my waters broke on the toilet within 10 minutes. I was like, I need to be in the shower. Was in the shower for an hour. And then after that, I said, all right, I need to get out. And then this time I was actually on hands and knees rather than standing, but in exactly the same place, same bathroom. And Danny was behind me. He knew that he wanted to catch the baby again from the first time. Our private midwife knew that as well. It was, she was aware that it was a hands-off approach from her unless needed. And she was, beautifully supporting us in that. And then she arrived about half an hour before he was born. She was actually out of the room when his head descended through. And it was just about really slowing down his birth and being present in it, because he was coming fast, and it was just, for me, being present in every contraction and feeling every motion. And it was a really beautiful birth as well. Descent his descent was a lot slower. So the actually one contraction brought him to about here, and his little eyes were poking out, and then the next contraction brought his head, and then the next contraction brought his body. So it was a lot slower, and it felt really, really good. It was great. And then, yeah, Danny caught him. He was healthy. And yeah, within, a couple of minutes, Lotus came in and met him, which was beautiful as well, that she could be a part of it that soon. And we did delayed cord clamping with him because he had a much longer cord. We actually did the candles where you burn the cord, which was really nice. And I found that his cord fell off a lot quicker than Lotus's, with it being burnt. Like, it was off within 2 days. It dried up so much faster. There was no smell. It was amazing, the difference between hers having snapped, or I would say, like being cut, than it being burnt. So yeah, that's one thing that we did different between the two. And yeah, the midwife checked us over, had a lot of skin on skin for that first couple of hours. It was beautiful being at home. Just doing the whole thing at home, not having that transition to the hospital and then back. It felt right.
Yeah.
That's really what it felt like. It felt like this is how it should be.
Yeah. Just really
Yeah.
having that undisturbed family time.
Yeah. And then even from then, because he was born in the evening as well, I think he was born about 4:30. So but by the time, the skin on skin and the midwife had checked him and everything, she left about 6:30. Then I had a shower, and then Danny was holding him, and I put Lotus to bed. And then, nothing was disturbed for her. I put her to bed like normal. She was still breastfeeding, so I was then tandem feeding. And yeah, put her to bed as normal. And then, yeah, Danny and I were sitting there, and it's like, we're on to our next chapter. It just didn't feel like it was a big disturbance. It was just like a natural thing that was part of our everyday life, as having a baby.
How quick was it from your waters breaking to the birth of your boy?
2 hours, 10 minutes.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is quick. Do you feel like you could really be in that and not feel overwhelmed? Could you stay present and in trust throughout that?
Yeah. I did a lot of prep for his birth, a lot of meditation and a lot of breath work for his birth, so that I could be present, because I remember talking to the doula about Lotus's birth and saying, like, it did feel really rushed, even though it was longer. And I knew that I just really wanted to experience it. So even though it was really short, I just felt like I was really in it, which was a nice experience.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So if you had a first-time mama in front of you right now who's about to have her first baby, and she really wants to have a natural and empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
My wisdom would be, choose your birth team that's really going to support you and what you want. Because I think, like, for me, that was a huge key for me being successful and getting the births that I want, was having that care team around me, and them knowing what I wanted was definitely a big highlight for me. And really just trusting your own intuition. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that so much. I couldn't agree more. So important, trusting yourself and having a team that you trust and feel safe and loved by. Yeah, it's everything.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful birth wisdom with us. It's been a pleasure having you.
it's really nice to relive it.
Mm.
When you share the stories again, it brings back that feeling that you have in those births, those empowering moments of how powerful the female body is and how powerful women are, and yeah, what we're naturally designed to do is when we can step into that, we can truly feel the power that's within ourselves. So yeah, thank you for letting me share that and being able to experience it back in myself again.
Beautiful. Such an honor. Thank you for coming on.
Pleasure, pleasure. You do a beautiful job letting other mamas hear their stories and being able to empower them as well.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as The Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.